Welcome to today's Digistore hardware check. I'm going to present the mxfSPEEDRAIL SD and HD video ingest solution, and I believe the perfect solution for people who require ProRes and DNxHD for Media Composer, for example, at the same time. Let's take a look at what we have here today. I have an mxfSPEEDRAIL, an Avid ISIS 5000, and a Mac Pro. By the way, the mxfSPEEDRAIL is a fairly flat unit. It's 1 HU, and it can carry 1 or 2 channels. So if you want to exceed and go beyond 2 channels, you need more than 1 mxfSPEEDRAIL. Okay, today's task is going to involve the following simulation, I should say. We would like to record ProRes straight onto the Mac Pro. The Mac Pro in this case is also going to be my NAS storage, okay? And in this case, the ProRes is a fairly high quality ProRes. It's ProRes 422HQ. Now, once the ProRes is recorded, I require DNxHD media as proxy files for the Avid workstations, and these shall go to the ISIS 5000. Now, with the mxfSPEEDRAIL, I don't need to transcode at all. I just do it at the same time. Okay, and I'm going to use the second gig Ethernet port here, and it's going to dump my mxf files straight onto the ISIS, and these files are going to be in today's setup DNxHD 36. Okay. Now you may say, okay, this is a good solution, but is it really a good idea in a live environment, for example, to capture over the network to 2 different devices? That's a pretty unstable solution sometimes. Well, today we're going to go one step further. We are going to record these mxf and ProRes files at the same time to an external eSATA disk. So that gives us an extra amount of security in case something in a network, for example, goes wrong. Okay, so let's jump into the mxfSPEEDRAIL user interface now. Okay, this is the user interface of the mxfSPEEDRAIL. I'm using remote desktop to access this user interface. This is not what you usually would do. You would usually open your favorite web browser, type in the IP address, and see exactly the same screen. Okay? If you have multiple mxfSPEEDRAILs, you would have additional tabs in this user interface that allow you to access the different mxfSPEEDRAILs. Now, due to my screencast today, I have to use remote desktop. Anyway, I'm going to start to record a clip straight away. I'm going to explain later on the essential settings and metadata and logging, for example, that you can set up. But for now, let's focus on the workflow. So let's assume I have done everything that I need. For example, give essential metadata like the tape name and the camera ID. Okay, so this is something that I have freely chosen. And then I have given in this window, I can give on the fly, basically during the recording and ingest, ratings of 1 or 3 stars. Let's hit record. As you can see, the clip name currently is called Demo 1 and then 012. This is again something that I can freely choose, and I'm going to cover that later on. Let's say this is a shot that I like very much. I simply would use a function key, or in this case I'm double clicking and just adding a couple of locators. As soon as I hit stop, this machine will obviously stop, but they can be ganged together. If you have multiple mxfSPEEDRAILs, they will all show up here, and you can, once you hit stop or record, all of these machines will over Ethernet sync and start the ingest process. Alright, so let's do this one more time. I give it 1 star, 2 stars, and 3 stars. These are my customizable fields, and I hit stop again. So far so good. Let's take a look at how the data looks on my storage. On the left hand side, I have my QuickTimes. Here they are, QuickTime 1, QuickTime 2, which obviously I can open in Final Cut. So if I grab these 2 QuickTimes, place them in here, you can see there's my clip number 1 and my clip number 2. Okay, so this is fairly straightforward, and the same thing applies to the Avid files. Here, this window is directly looking into the ISO storage. This is the media that was captured directly into the Avid media files directory. And if I want to import that into the media composer, well, fortunately I have these AAFs here. Okay, they were captured at the same time. So if I open my media composer and I grab these two AAFs, there they are. And if I drop them into the timeline, you can see I have both clips, including the locators. So the locators are here, the black little things. Okay, both clips. And if I go and take a look at the locators, you can see that they all came through nicely. So this is essential metadata that you need throughout the editing process, but at the same time, all the clip information, for example, the tape name that I have given and the camera ID have come through as well. And it's not only part of the mxf files that I've created, they are also part of the QuickTime files that I've created. So I have XML files here, they carry exactly the same metadata. So if I ever need to work with the QuickTimes and access the metadata at the same time, all the metadata, it's in the XMLs as well. Okay, so this is the workflow. It's very, very easy. I think it's very straightforward, and I have all this data that I've captured. It's on the local storage of the mxfSPEEDRAIL as well. So if I accidentally delete this, well, I still can access it on the mxfSPEEDRAIL and just copy it over. Okay, so this is an excellent, I think, ProRes and DNxHD workflow. The mxfSPEEDRAIL, as the name suggests, can handle pretty much any mxf format. And now let's take a closer look on how you set this whole thing up. Let me go back into this window. It is a 3-step process setting up the mxfSPEEDRAIL. You need to set up the storage, you need to set up the profile, the codec that you want to capture, and lastly, you need to set up the metadata. So these 3 steps are extremely easy, and I can guide you through it right now if you stay with me. Step number 1, settings. You can see 2 main buttons, server and asset management. So the storage is very straightforward. It's simply the IP address of the storage. You don't worry about the path. Okay, one for the Avid and one for the QuickTime. That is pretty much it. Everything you need to set up. My username is Smoke, because it's Smoke on Mac in this case. And then if I go back, asset management, exactly the same thing here. I set up a storage device for XML and AAF, and I don't worry about the path. It's just about the storage IP address and the user credentials. And that is literally everything that you need for on the storage side. By the way, it does interface directly, if you want to, with Interplay. So all these things I'm not going to cover today. Step number 2 is set up your profile. Now, to make things easy, you can set up different profiles. I only have one, but you could have different setups for different jobs that you need to do. This is the window. Okay, let's start from scratch, and you will see it's extremely easy. So I'm going to make a new project here, capture profile 0. We're going to start with HD, and it supports all HD formats. Let's go for something that is not 25, for example 24, which is a standard that you would not necessarily use in broadcast. And if I enable the drop frame, it's turning into 2398. So it's designed for post-production workflows as well as broadcast workflows. Okay. The time code, very important. You can go for VITC or LTC or time of day. And this is actually the easy part down here. How do you select the codec? Well, you go to the ProRes 422HQ, for example, and then you have basically no chance to select anything else. Okay. On the server side, you select the Mac Pro ProRes, the storage device that I set up previously, and you type in the path. If you want to add a second path, you simply click in here and say, I would like to capture onto OS, that is my external eSATA disk, okay, and it's done. Now the proxy works exactly the same, except that for the proxy I can only select DNxHD in this particular mxfSPEEDRAIL, and again I have a limited number of storage choices, in this case the ISA standalone as I have called it. Again, you type in the path name and you can select a second destination, which is going to be my eSATA drive OS, and that's it. This is all you need to do to set up basically your codec that you want to record. And the last step is, how do you handle metadata and clip naming? This is actually very exciting, and I would like to show that as well. As you can see here, metadata and clip naming. Well, metadata, this is the default metadata field. Okay, so I end up, once this is done, and I'm in my capture window here, it's a little bit grayed out, but I can type in, for example, my tape name. Okay. Next thing, let's say I would like to go for camera ID, and I would like to give it just number values. So this is possible as well. Okay, and the number should not exceed, let's say, camera 99. Okay, I could add as many additional metadata fields as I like. For example, real ID. In this case, it's probably not very useful. And give it a number as well. Okay, so pretty straightforward. The same applies to the locators. So I have given it 1 star, 2 stars, and so on, but you could type in whatever you want. And by the way, if you want, you can type in whatever metadata you want while it's recording. So you're not limited to predefined locators. You can add whatever you want, okay, while it's recording, of course. Lastly, the clip naming. As you can see, I have the default clip name values on the left-hand side, and all the metadata that I have recorded, I can put it into the real name as well. So if I, for example, want to have a label, well, I go in there and say helmet costs. That's me. The next thing is going to be a separator. So I simply drag the separator in here, and followed by the tape name. So I drag the tape name in there. Come on. Remote desktop, not a good idea. And lastly, I would like to have an automatic counter, otherwise I keep overwriting my own stuff. So let's add another separator. And a counter. The counter can be customized as well, as you can see. Let's go for numbers. And this is everything I need to do. I'm pretty much done at this stage. So I save the setup and I'm ready to record. By the way, I have forgotten to mention that. Asset management, this applies to the AAF and XML destination. Yeah, so it's fairly easy. Okay, that was an overview of the mxfSPEEDRAIL. I think for people who require ProRes, for example, and DNxHD, it's certainly the perfect solution, simply because no transcoding is required, and you don't have to worry that during a transcoding process, essential metadata may get lost. So there is certainly no danger in losing all this valuable information with the SPEEDRAIL. I also have to mention that I think it's probably the most intuitive system that I have used for a long time. It's you turn the system on and it launches the user interface automatically, and you can set up everything within that user interface and rarely need to access the windows operating system. So that is important to mention because there are a lot of very difficult to use and difficult to set up ingest systems on the market as well. All right, so far so good. See you next time.